Now, for all of us here, it's been a tough 14 months, not least, obviously, recalibrating, reimagining events. Financially and creatively, it has been quite a struggle, and I think everybody here are brilliant leaders and have had to reimagine and recreate what they've been doing, or face the enormous challenges around putting events on. We're all used to delivering events, and I think it's been quite unusual not to be able to do that. Although Debs here, I think, has got an event in 2 weeks. So I'm probably going to start with Debs, but first of all, I would like the panel to just introduce themselves, and they'll tell themselves just a little bit about their event and who they are. So let's start with you, Debs, if you want to introduce yourself.
So I'm Debs Shilling. I'm from a Black Deer Festival. I'm the co-founder and co-promoter. My beautiful partner in crime is right down there in the front row. So we are in our third year of Black Deer, so 2018, 2019, and sadly for all of us, we missed 2020. And we've now rolled our festival into 21. At the start of construction was yesterday on our site. So the fence line is going up, and 28 days we'll be opening our gates. So we're very, very excited, feeling really positive about it, and yeah, we just can't wait to get the show on the road.
Excellent, thank you. And Mair?
Just put these on. Actually, I'll do it like that. So I'm Mair Morel, and I am the creative producer at Boomtown Festival. I've been with the festival for 12 years since the beginning, and I started off as one of the first performers there, and I've sort of grown and evolved with the show, and we've grown into quite a big beast. I should explain the show, shouldn't I? Always assume everyone knows. Boomtown is a 66,000 capacity festival. It's, I think, the largest independent festival of its kind. We have 3 main stages that have like 30,000 capacity, 2 are dance, and 1 is a live reggae acts. We're famous for our storyline that runs across the whole show, so there's like an overarching story, and then we have like 14 themed districts that are built like movie sets, and within all of those there are little venues and characters that you can interact with, and the whole story and the whole show culminates in a Sunday night finale, basically, which always ends on a cliffhanger for next year. But that was us pre-COVID. I'll talk a bit more post-COVID through the show.
Indeed. Thank you, Mair. And Ed, you do something a little bit differently, I think, than an open air.
Thank you very much. Hi, yes, my name's Ed Bartlam. I'm the co-founder of Underbelly. We started the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2000, and we still run quite a lot of venues and both indoor venues and outdoor venues there every year summer. But we're kind of a mixture of a kind of large-scale festival business, and we produce things like Edinburgh's Hogmanay, Scotland, to kind of big mass gatherings, but also we do a lot of city centre kind of cultural festivals or pop-ups in temporary spaces, and so kind of Christmas events in London, central London, Christmas events in Edinburgh. We've run a festival on the South Bank called Underbelly Festival for a number of years, and it's kind of a mixture of big outdoor areas and pop-up bars and F&B, and then kind of a whole programme of shows that take place usually inside tents, one of which is in the shape of a big purple cow. But that's a whole other story.
Which I was really disappointed that Ed didn't come in full purple cow costume.
I promise you.
And Henry.
Yep, so I'm Henry Bass. I'm the General Manager for the Goodwood Revival. The Revival is an outdoor sort of motorsport event held at the Goodwood Estate at the historic Goodwood Motor Circuit. We attract about 150,000 people over 3 days, usually every September. And one of the key things about our event is we celebrate a period 1948 to 1966, so it's entirely in period, and about of our 150,000 people that come, probably 80-90% are all dressed in period clothing, so it creates quite an extraordinary sort of magical step back in time we talk about. But alongside that, we also run the Festival of Speed, which attracts about 200,000 people, and that's a hill climb held at Goodwood House each summer, run over 4 days. And we also run a slightly smaller, more exclusive members meeting as well, which is a 2-day event in March, which is for our Goodwood Road Racing Club members.
Brilliant, thank you, and hello to all of those who have just joined. So first of all, what I want to talk about, you can hear that everybody has got a very unique approach to each of their events and creatively have imagined whole new worlds. So Debs, I'd like to just start with you, so you can tell us just a little bit around what made you decide to do Black Deer, what made you decide to embrace Americana and why that choice, and a bit about how you came to that point.
Okay. So yes, Black Deer we started Black Deer as a festival of Americana and country music. We'd met up with this chap who was looking to put on a festival in the sense that it was one of his sort of lifelong ambitions. And with the experience that we've had in the past, Jill was festival director of the Hop Farm, which was a really successful festival over a long period of time. We decided that, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create our own festival, and that's what happened. The genre of Americana and country, we decided to obviously get under the skin of that and to really understand what it was about. It was a lifelong love of our own, certainly the Americana side of it. And so we set about really understanding what the genre was all about, because we felt that we had to do it in a really authentic way. Americana fans, you can't bullshit them. We had to do it properly. So literally we hopped on a plane to Nashville and we spent many hours talking to agents, artists, really just trying to sort of understand the culture that surrounds the whole genre. And yes, it was literally thousands of hours of, going to flea markets and just really understanding the whole sort of look and feel and dynamic of what we wanted to do. And we wanted to do it in there are other Americana festivals in the UK, but we felt that there wasn't particularly one that had done it with real high production values. And we were going in with sort of 6-7 stages in our first year. So there was, a lot of work to do to sort of understand what it was all about, really. So
I think the criteria of putting a festival on and of starting with an idea and a concept and a culture, it's like, well, what is going to make it work? And I think, in a festival, market which is absolutely saturated and so many people are putting festivals on, is what makes yours different and what criteria. And I think if I come to you, Mair, just like, picking up from Debs and that creative process, what criteria do you look at when you created Boomtown to make it not just different, but also work for different demographics? And the theme, and what do your consumers want? Because often they don't know they want it until you give it to them.
Sorry, this is really confusing me. I'll take a look. For us, Boomtown began, the founders, 12 years ago, there was a lot of exciting things happening in Bristol at the time, and I think when we started off, we sort of took that into a festival setting. Like, it was, the Invisible Circus were doing Carnival, and the boys were putting nights on in Bristol, and we sort of wanted to put that in a field, and then it kind of grew. I think the town concept grew, and then, we're a passionate and ambitious bunch, and we've evolved with the show, and you can see what possibilities you can do. We've just gone for it. In terms of what the audience wants, I think we are socially aware, and it's a bit of a mission of ours to reflect what's going on in the world anyway, so we're quite current with our story. We didn't expect that our last 2020 storyline would actually become the reality.
Because that was a really resonant theme, wasn't it?
We were exploring, for the last few years we've been very hot on the sustainability, and we're trying to embed that into the event, but also in the storyline, and trying to create like positive change in the community outside of the event, so that it rolls out. past that, but we were exploring themes to do with AI, and we weren't going down that classic, the machines are going to take over. We're going to quite a philosophical place with it, and she was actually looking at nature and the power in nature, and we were taking it in that direction. And then we also had a venue in Bristol that we were opening, and we were running these events there that were all about a infection coming, and then the actual show was going to be called State of Emergency in 2020, and then obviously that actually did happen. So we've been right on the nail with it, to the point where we thought we should call the next one World Peace, but we're not going to do that. Yeah, I've lost my thread now.
No, that's okay. I think it's really just about differentiating that, and also Boomtown brought in a whole new world, didn't it? And we'll talk about sort of production values a bit later in the conversation.
Like it's not. I like to think of it as like we're not putting on a festival, we're building a world, because there's so much detail. Like we all work. There was a massive team. There was like 40 of us working all year round, and there's so much detail in building that world. Like, because I think you could separate creatively. Like there's music, the production, and the set, and then there's the theatre and performance, and it all has to come together for it to work. Like all of those aspects have to interact for that to really feel alive, and I think it really works. But it's
a difficult job, isn't it, sort of coalescing all of those ideas, and I think we're a very, very long way from, a main stage in a hot dog stall, aren't we, when we're at Boomtown?
Yeah, it's not. There's so many links, and all of the districts have we have a district identity briefs, and then we have like the overarching, and then we also have the maze storyline gameplay, which they all have to interact with each other. There's layers and layers and layers and layers of it. Even to the point where in 2020, Kay Dunnings, who's she works at Shangri-La as well, but she's an amazing set designer, and she had taken some of the content from our online game, the alternate reality gaming, some of the stuff the public had put on the group, and she'd written that onto the set, because that part of the set is based in the future, so that people might find it, and then that would blow their minds. So there's like really tiny but relevant and important details.
I really like that. I think it's a really interesting way of how you've brought your audience participation and interaction of your consumers into your world, and bringing that into reality. Well, or not reality, as the case may be. And I think that's a big thing I think I want to sort of bring to you as well, Henry. So financial risk, because everyone has like massive imagination and in realizing all of these things, but where does the imagination stop and reality begin with regards to finance?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. Last year with COVID, it's probably a really good example. It's probably just worth mentioning something we did last year. In light of COVID, we didn't run any live events in the end, and we created something called Speed Week, which was a combination of all of the content from our 3 motorsports events wrapped up effectively in 2 days of filming at the circuit, which then for our customers became accessible through ITV4, ITV, and online live streaming. So for us, that was an enormous leap into the unknown. Predominantly, we build events. We're an operations team, and within our company, the operations team sort of, sits really, at the top. It's key to what we do, and we found that the digital team suddenly needed a lot more investment, and all of the filming. We needed to bring in executive producers. So suddenly we were spending sort of millions of pounds on something completely untested. But in a weird way, it was worth it. It gave us the nudge we needed into the digital world. I mean, we were already sort of tiptoeing into it, but to really embrace it in its fullness, COVID strangely gave us the excuse to spend everything on filming and digital.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk about that a bit later, really. I think that whole digital and hybrid, how we've embraced that and what COVID has meant in our reimagining of events. But I think one of the things that's really hard, as well, is in that financial sort of risk. It's what are you putting on? How are you sort of realising that? Because you have your usual audience of what their expectations are, but also you've got a lot more challenges in creating sort of your vision. And I think there are many things that maybe haven't worked, in in the past. Plus, I think, perhaps Ed, you might want to sort of tell us about things that you've imagined. I think in the light of, changing ideas and thinking of that reimagining, because we've got financially those restrictions. I see a lot of people have gone for sort of star names or very sort of typical shows, that they feel that the public can sort of rely on to see, but actually part and parcel of, a festival is new work and, particularly I think in comedy.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've kind of grown out of the Edinburgh Fringe, and the Edinburgh Fringe spirit and curatorial spirit is about new artists and new performers, and so I suppose Underbelly's ethos has always been to give new artists a kind of platform, and we hope that kind of people come and see shows that they might not have heard about or see artists they haven't heard about before. And what we like to then try and do is layer above that a number of headline artists that hopefully bring people to our festivals or events, and they may go and see a show for that headline artist, but then the sprinkle down is that they'll go and pick up a ticket for one of the kind of a kind of newer act at a kind of good affordable ticket price. I think there's an interesting thing going forward, kind of coming out of COVID and trying to balance that, as you say, the kind of financial risk reward thing. I think we all have to be much more aware of being leaner and meaner, but not damaging the kind of artistic creativeness of the festivals. And I think that's something that we're planning some festivals. We're opening a kind of pop-up festival in Cavendish Square in July, and then hopefully a bigger one in Earl's Court for 3 months. And we're programming it at the moment, and it's how much does one keep it quite safe and go for the bigger names, as you say, that you're going to get people there and you need to get people there, but then how much do you need to stay true to your curatorial vision of wanting to support not younger artists, but kind of newer artists. And I think that's a kind of ongoing kind of up and down debate that we're having, certainly within Underbelly. I'm sure other festivals and events are having the same.
And I think it's such a challenge, isn't it? Because ultimately, you're selling tickets on a lot of the big names, and at the expense, I think, now of possibly smaller artists. And I think that's also something to consider about representation, inclusivity and diversity. And I'd like to ask you a bit about that, actually, because you've got those challenges about bringing new artists in, with your event, but also a lot of festivals, as we all know, are being criticised for being very white, male, and not necessarily representative. And I think it's if anyone
on the... You're asking me the question?
I'm asking Ed because Ed is white and male.
Yeah. That's very unfair. I think we are, and I say this with complete authenticity. I'm lucky that with Underbelly we have, just by the nature of the kind of artists that we've worked with for years, again, it kind of comes out of that fringe spirit and those amazing artists that start their life out at the Edinburgh Fringe. What we program, who we program, and who we're programming for is very diverse, and a lot of our audience is very diverse, and therefore we're programming shows and delighted to be programming shows that correspond to that diverse audience that we have. So, and I'm lucky that I'm surrounded by lots of people that aren't in our amazing team that aren't white and male like me, and that we've got a very diverse team, and that's brilliant. So I feel very kind of comfortable is the wrong word, because I think one can still always do more in terms of who you're booking and who you're working with, but I think that it's definitely something that we are actively doing and have done for many, many years.
It's something I think even in the last discussion that was just on about disabled access and all of those elements. It's how to sort of imagine your event and realise that. And one of the things, it's when you've got sort of set venue or a set sort of structure and the ways that you've done it. Obviously now we're also considering how much sort of spacing and various aspects that we've got to think about physically and structurally, but also at the same time there's a massive demand on all of our panelists to be creative and brave. And I think, Henry, you talk about creative bravery on your website, and I think you've made sort of these whole kind of racing events into like a full festival experience. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think at its heart, we're about motorsport, but we've discovered over the years that actually we can bring a lot more to motorsport across all the three events, and particularly with the revival, it was a real celebration of period lifestyle, 48 to 66, and a few years ago we got very interested in the fashion, and we focused on the fashion of that period, and now, it was staring us in the face, and we've realised sustainability is really at the heart of what the event is about. All of the cars we have running are sort of 90 years old, 80 years old, 70 years old. They've all been repaired, remended, reused, basically. And so while there's this whole narrative where sort of companies are trying to very quickly catch up with the sustainability message, we've suddenly realised we've been doing it for 20 years. So we like to think we were sort of creative from the outset in that sense, but we didn't really cotton on to it quickly enough. With the latest sort of surge in that being an important thing. So we're working very hard at the moment to make sure all the events really embrace that creativity, and we bring it to life. So in the sustainable sense, a lot of festivals are doing things like biodiesel and plastic cups and everything like that. But I like to think with our events, we're bringing it to life in a very different way, because as sensible and as good as it is to do the basic things, it doesn't really incentivise you to buy a ticket, and it doesn't leave you leaving the event thinking, wow, I've had a great time. So where we've tried to be creative is, well, how do you make sustainability interesting and fun? And at the revival, we've created allotments, so we're celebrating sort of rationing from the war, and we'll have original allotments with gardeners, and we're actually going to grow carrots, and kids can go and pick the carrots, and they can take them to the chef, and he'll show them how to turn them into a stew. So all those little ideas throughout the event. We're going to have a vintage car boot sale. So instead of it sort of being a Ford Mondeo with a bit of Tupperware out the back, actually we want people to come with their Ferrari 250s and sell sort of a bespoke Yves Saint Laurent dress out the back. So it's sort of Goodwood does car boot sale. So that's sort of where our creativity sort of goes.
I think it's a really interesting point as well to think about, especially a motor event, looking at sustainability and how we can integrate that, especially when you're looking at, at that period in time.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to seeing a car run on the carrot from the allotment, I think.
Nearly. I think we're looking at biofuel, some sort of bio enhancements to the petrol, so the cars can continue on their same engines. And obviously the Festival of Speed, very different again. I mean, we're championing electric, and we're going to have at Festival of Speed this year, Electric Avenue. I think we've got sort of 30 or 40 of the world's best electric cars coming together in one place.
Any tips which one we should have?
Any of them would do. They're all very cheap to run. And amazingly, a few years ago, we had, for the first time on the hill climb, an electric car. It took the unofficial record, but the VW IDR just smashed it. I mean, so anyway.
That's the one I'll be getting then, obviously. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that is, sustainability, climate change is a massive topic. And I think, Mair, you've talked, just earlier about, reflecting the thoughts of a nation. And I think in a lot of what our events are here, therefore, is to entertain and to give a great experience. But I think I would really like to just hear a little bit more about how you sort of disrupt and, and educate within your festival under the banner of fun.
So we've got, I think it was 2017 when, like I said, we've been evolving with the show, and we realised, that we had these massive dance stages and then we had this kind of captive audience, and we were like, well, that first time we put the finale show on the Sunday, and it was really nerve-wracking because we were like, people on Sunday, they just want to dance. They don't want to watch this thing. And so we were nervous about putting on, but we were quite, quietly confident. But when that show rolled out, this, 20,000 people drum bass stage, not expecting this atmospheric music to drop and this videos to come on, and this speech. And at that point, we were introducing the masked man character who was introducing a revolution at that stage. This is quite a few years ago. But we did that, and then the tune dropped, and then everybody just went mad, and then everybody put their fists in the air. And it was just like a unifying moment, and we realised, they get the story. Everybody likes this. So then we've just rolled with that basically, and like I said, we like to reflect real world things. Like we've tackled consumerism a bit, but then since we've had a big shift, as the sort of core crew towards sustainability, I think as the world has, made that the main theme. Like we broke the fourth wall in our, I think it was the chapter 10 show, where we got the main character to turn around and say, like, there is no future for Boomtown unless the public and the organisers all consider the consequences and the environment. And we basically told everyone to take the tents home, which we were really, you know, that's a bit, that could be hit or miss, but it had a real impact on the results we saw. And, you know, you feel enormously guilty about the impact you have on the land of a show of that scale. So since, you know, we've been working really hard to communicate that message, and I think we've got that young audience, and they like the way that we do it, because, you know, like I said, it's not just on these main stage shows. It'll be in everything. It'll be in the billboards on the street. It'll be in what the characters are talking. You know, so one district will be pro-sustainability, another one will be pro-technology, and so we, you know, that dialogue is going continuously through the 5 days. So even though it's like, you know, it is a festival and a hedonistic experience, we are always trying to communicate.
I think that's a crucial point about encouraging customer loyalty. It's having a proper conversation with them, isn't it? And allowing them to sort of give you that feedback and in realising your event, because they have so much of a part to play within that. Yeah. I think, I mean, honestly, bring on the revolution. I'm all there for it.
It's quite bold, isn't it?
And Debs, I think that's something that you've also, you know, really done. I think you in designing your event and bringing that experience, which actually, to be honest, I think with all of us, you know, obviously apart from the government who went skiing in February, but you know, sorry. But you've created a whole world. You've sort of brought Nashville into Tunbridge Wells, haven't you? So tell us how you did that.
So we've sort of, you know, there's all the touch points of the festival. So again, as I mentioned before, as an example, you know, a really big part of Americana, the Americana lifestyle is the smokehouse cooking.
Oh, yeah.
And barbecue. And so we brought in a team of experts, a couple of guys, John Finch and Ben Marrington, who used to run a big festival in Bristol called Grillstock. I don't know if you know it, but they did one in a big 20,000 cap one in London as well. And these guys know everything there is to know about smokehouse cooking and barbecue. So I asked the guys if they would be interested in coming in and just curating that part of the festival. And they've done an amazing job. They've brought, you know, the best pit masters from the US, some of the best smokehouse chefs in the UK to our live fire stage. So there's masterclasses and fabulous talks. We got DJ Barbecue this year, who's going to bring his little bit of spice to our stages. And you know, as I said, when we were out in Nashville, you know, there's some experiences that we had that we brought back. So, for example, we have a gospel brunch on the Sunday morning, and it's literally an incredible gospel choir.
Amazing.
Who, you know, we give out some food to everybody. So some southern fried chicken with maple syrup and waffles, as you know, offering it up to the congregation. And it's literally just, you know, an hour of belters, and we have some of our guests that come in and sing, and it is just the most uplifting experience.
And you've really recreated that whole kind of conversation as well with the music, haven't you, with your audience?
Yes.
You've really engaged your community into that world
as
well. Perhaps you could sort of say, I think one of the things that I think we spoke about, which was really interesting to me, is that sustaining that, you know, customer conversation, and how you've sort of interacted with them over the last year. And I know that a lot of festivals haven't done it so well, but I think you've particularly done it well, haven't you?
Yeah, so, you know, we talk to our customers and our, you know, ticket holders, fans, for 12 months of the year, and we don't let up on that. And, you know, one of the big things is we want to educate. We want to bring this really amazing lifestyle, and you know, we want people to understand it because it's so rich. And you know, a lot of people don't realise that, you know, Americana is, you know, a lot of today's hip hop artists were influenced by, you know, 1920s blues artists. So we're constantly trying to educate our people that are looking at us. For example, we've got a great sort of magazine type blog that goes out on our website on a regular basis. It's called The Pick, and what The Pick is basically it's all the touch points of our festival, looking at the music, looking at the lifestyle. So as an example, one of the last ones, so there's a song called In the Pines, which was by Lead Belly. So we did, the story of the Pines, and I think right up until modern day, where Kurt Cobain sang it his last show he did on an MTV show. So it's the whole history of that song, and we're just constantly educating our people about the richness of what Black Deer is.
It's incredible, really, and I think one of the things you've got so sort of in your community, you've got so sort of involved in those conversations. You were telling me about like a Wilco fan who'd got, your community. I mean, they literally are like your family, aren't they?
Yeah, well, as part of us, being sort of, educating, and we wanted a really strong community manager at Black Deer, so we thankfully found this amazing guy called Alan O'Hare. He's in Liverpool. He was a writer for m.i.c.e UK, and he was also a journalist. So we brought him on board, and he's been absolutely brilliant. The conversations that he starts with, not only with anyone who's on our social platforms. He talks to the artists and the fans, and in a really fantastic way. And I think I mentioned to you that I was just lying in bed last couple of weekends ago and just scrolling through, Twitter, and I just noticed a message flash up. And on there was just a string of, conversation between Alan and this guy whose wife had sadly been diagnosed with cancer, and she was a Wilco fan, and I just saw this conversation between a guy that works for us and a fan talking about, it was the first song that his wife, that was played at their wedding. That anyway, unfortunately, she's in a hospice now, and it actually made me cry, because I just felt, wow, this is the care that is so important to us, to really interact and engage with our customers in a really sensitive and emotive ways.
I think it's also very meaningful, isn't it?
Exactly.
People, there's a real ownership of festivals, your community,
exactly.
Really, and that, I think those conversations, and I think we talked about that, Ed, as well, about how you'd thought about reimagining your sort of, conversations with your audience and your digital strategy, actually, as well, having given pause for thought over the last year.
We did one, the only big kind of, I guess, leap we made into digital world last year was on Edinburgh's Hogmanay, which is usually 150,000 people in the middle of Edinburgh for 3 days, big street party, fireworks over the castle, lots of music, and obviously that wasn't possible. And we kind of, as it got closer and closer, we started having new ideas, and we initially were going to do a drone show, and we were actually going to do it as we were initially going to do it as a live show. As I'm sure we've all found, as kind of months went on, the weeks went on, and everything became more and more unrealistic, it kind of morphed into this 3-part. We filmed these drones in the Scottish Highlands, and we got the Scottish poet laureate Macca called Jackie Kay, who's amazing, to write a poem, and we got a band called Nightworks from the Isle of Skye to do a soundtrack, and we like David Tennant to narrate the words, and we put together these 3 films, which were filmed in the Highlands, and then we superposed them into Edinburgh, and we put them out on the 29th, 30th and 31st, which is the same. The Hogmanay is a 3-day festival, and Edinburgh's Hogmanay is very much about the fact that it's not just New Year's Eve, it's about the pre and the post, so it had to be 3 days. So we put them out kind of on our own channels, and it was amazing, the reaction that we kind of got, and I think we're up to kind of 10 million views just on our own channels throughout the world. And what was brilliant about it was that Edinburgh's Hogmanay has always been a kind of international facing festival, and it usually brings people from all over the world. It's kind of on all those bucket lists, you've got to do Edinburgh's Hogmanay. And this was an opportunity to give those people from all over the world, and people who probably never will get to Edinburgh, a bit of their Hogmanay. So I think that it was a good example of something that we kind of almost stumbled into, desperately holding on to the plan to do a live something, and as soon as that kind of dropped away, we kind of had to. I hate the word pivot. I really hate the word pivot, but that's all I. But move to it, and it's. Although we're very much planning to do a live event this year, or live events as part of the festival, we will definitely be doing something online in a digital way to kind of complement that, and that's something that we would have never thought about really doing before.
And it's really made everyone take a bit more of a leap towards that embracing technology, isn't it? And
yes.
I think also you get a greater reach internationally of those audiences, and I think you've also had that experience, haven't you? I mean, you with your Festival of Speed last year, it's almost opened up sponsor opportunities more.
Yeah, it's been really strong, really powerful sort of thing we've done. So the events sell out, all of the Goodwood events really. So not everyone wants to come can come. So we've managed to, by really strengthening digital and online and the filming quality, we've allowed more people to enjoy the event, not just in the UK, but much like you globally. We've opened up a whole new reach, and then the knock on to that, you're quite right, is the sponsorship. I mean, it's fantastic. So we can be really clear now with our sponsors about ROI. It used to be very much a passion-driven thing, and being part of the event physically and engaging the 50,000 a day we had. But now they can engage them 365 days a year on our digital platforms, which is a tremendous sort of leap forward, really.
I mean, that is an incredible leap, isn't it? From going from one sort of event to now being 365. Sorry, Ed.
What I would say, and I suspect we all share this, is that having said how great it is to do stuff digitally online, like what we do is live, and live is the exciting thing, and live is the thing that, that live experience, no one could beat that. So I don't think I can never see Underbelly kind of like moving away and just becoming and putting all of our stuff online. I think it has to complement and be about the live show, but has to be a way that you can reach a new audience, but not distract from the live. Does that make sense?
I mean, no, because everybody loves a live event. That unification of being together, and seeing that event and experiencing it with people. But it's also picking out those points of where it can work, and how I think for you, you've particularly sort of made that sing, and also because within your industry, there's so much around that VR and experience, which I am going to ask you about in a minute.
No, absolutely. I think, to your point, we always talk about having a goosebump moment at our events, and I get them every year. There's one moment, and you get the little goosebumps because you've got loads of people around you that are having a fantastic time, and we certainly missed that at Speed Week. We walked around really an empty set, effectively. Some great cars, and the content was great, but it without question the core physical event is front and centre, and effectively we've just got this great new tool to annex it with and expand what we're doing.
And I think it's made it, you take those leaps, and I think that's something, you were possibly going to do this year at Boomtown, which obviously has been cancelled, and you've reimagined your output. I think, but is that something that you'll still stay with? Are you going to sort of test that out at Boom Village?
Well, we went from the 2020 show where we were looking at all sorts of tech to help with this gameplay mechanics and moving people around site, but we're also kind of torn because the last thing you want is for people to be in a field and then looking down at their phones. So we were like, hang on, this is not really working. But I was about to go to South by Southwest for this funding to marry that like tech and theatre sort of stuff that we were doing. But 2020 came and we had that big chance to pause, and we really needed that because we'd been a bit like a steam train. And we took the time and we did loads of focus groups, really connected with the audience, which we're lucky with Boomtown. There's like 10,000 strong group Boomtown chat, and they're very loyal, and there was loads of feedback, and we really thought about, what makes Boomtown unique, what do people really come for, and we realised it was actually quite a lot of the lo-fi stuff, like those random moments that you get in those little venues. And we did our online event in 2020, we stripped it right back, we went really lo-fi with it, and just made it really silly about costume, and we got loads of our smaller crews to come and do their own little versions of what they do. But yeah, moving forward, we've kind of got 2 events like now. So we've got the Chapter 1 Boomtown, which we have reimagined and really focused on our values of connection, because we weren't really so enamoured by the tech side of it, to be honest with you. Like, we'll probably still do a little bit, but for us it was about that connection that you get at an event. So we've reimagined that show and the layout and taken those factors into consideration, but unfortunately we've had to move that to 2022. Yeah. So now we are doing Boom Village, which is a really small show, which is for tickets will be going to locals, and we're just going to really embed those values, and it'll give us a chance to roll out some of the sustainable initiatives that we want to test out on a small scale before we go bigger with them. And we're excited just to do something small again, to be honest, just something where you're live and in a field.
And that's just for your local community, isn't it?
And I think to really build bridges with our, because we've got so big, and obviously we take over their world for a little bit with all the traffic and everything, so it's important to give back and build bridges there. We've connected with a uni, and we've got an amazing community local engagement officer as well, and she's throwing people at us. And it's just good to have that time to do that, scale back and do that again. And I think that's something, talking of communities, because Ed, yours is a bit different because you're going into cities which have been much more affected by COVID. You've got, shops closing, and your new Oxford Circus, project is going, into the city, and that brings about a whole either new opportunity or different restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. So yeah, we've kind of really focused a lot by complete accident of just doing these kind of city centre pop-up festivals that run for a period of weeks or months, and they sit down in like Leicester Square at Christmas, or this Cavendish Square, or the South Bank, and those are brilliant. It's brilliant because there's kind of pluses and minuses. There's lots of logistical and operational minuses. There's noise, there's residents, there's people that don't want you to be there, there's using open space for a long period of time. But the benefits, I think increasingly this will be the case with towns and cities, the benefits are that you're bringing something cultural and different and pop-up and temporary and creative and cultural to an area which may need that. It may need that culturally, but also increasingly high streets and town centres and city centres kind of being hollowed out, people aren't going in there. So I think that what we found is that there's more and more local authorities and kind of local stakeholders and developers that want the kind of events that we do in their kind of town city centres, because it helps to animate, it helps to bring people into a city, into a town. And I think that but we have to, it's a really difficult, we do a lot of work with our kind of the local residents and communities around our sites, because we know that we're plonking ourselves down there for 3 months, and that's not always a good thing. And we do a lot of kind of outreach. We talk to them, we bring them down to the site, we write to them. They have the phone number for our site manager 24 hours a day, which is sometimes a bad idea. But so there is all of that really important stakeholder stuff you have to do. But I think there's going to be an interesting move towards more events, despite the logistical challenges, happening in city centres and town centres.
Yeah, I think particularly that has changed. I think, the spaces that we use and how we use those. I'm just aware of the time, and I just wondered if there was any questions, if anyone in the audience has got anything that they want to ask. Amazing. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I'm not sure about microphone etiquette, so I'm going to keep my mask on. I just wondered, thank you so much. That's so interesting to hear what you're saying, guys, and to hear where you're at. Thank you. I just wondered, a bit of a challenging one to think about, but where do you think we're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? What are the sort of key shifts that you see this eruption of a pandemic sort of bringing forward to the sort of top of the list, which maybe before might have been something that you wouldn't necessarily have prioritised so much?
Who wants to take that one? Henry's taking those off. It's like, not me.
So I may be completely in my own camp on this. But I kind of feel that, there's the immediate impact that COVID's had, and one can't predict other things that come along. But I kind of, maybe I'm just totally naive, I feel that there's it's going to drive people into a live, wanting to go and see live shows, go to live events, be sociable, interact with people more. And in a way, I think the challenges and the things that we continue to face in this whole sector is going to be less about COVID and more about the things that we've already been looking at, which is sustainability, impact on the environment, impact on climate, people traveling, all that kind of stuff. So it's ridiculous that I don't want to get too het up on COVID and it's been terrible for everybody. But I think there's some much bigger challenges, and those will be the challenges that we'll continue to face.
I agree with that, so you're not in your own camp.
But I think it's also, it's reflecting, it's being celebratory, and also I think that we've all taken time to sort of see what's meaningful and what works. I mean, is there anything you think, Henry, I think that you've learned, through this and that you might take forward or that has made you do it differently?
Well, I think, the digital stuff clearly, but I absolutely echo entirely what Ed was saying, which is, I think increasingly people are going to work from home. The need for social interaction is going to be more important as time goes on. So I think there'll be, I think we've got a pent-up demand for people wanting to go out immediately, and in time, people will continue to want to be at events. So I think that's really exciting. And to your point, I think the real challenges are around supply chain. Funny enough, Brexit, the impact on supply chain with that, and sustainability in building the events, not just the event days, but the amount of infrastructure that gets loaded in and out of these events, all by road, all by diesel truck, diesel generators, diesel tower lights running. I think the real developments over the next 5-10 years will become in sustainability, more permanent infrastructure, or just more reusable ways of doing things and using sites.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, actually. Yeah, sorry, Mair.
I was just, sorry to butt in, I just was thinking about the impact of COVID and how I think, it's really emphasised how damaging loneliness is to us as a collective. And I think, we are going to be working from home more, and like you said, I think the need for a community and a connection, I think that is what's going to be important. I was listening to something on a podcast about the importance of the community, and I think we've become very individualised in our society. We live in our own houses, and I'm hoping personally, that will come out of this more, that people will understand that, we have our festival communities, but people want to be part of that because they want to be part of something. So I'm hoping this rolls out more generally across the world.
It is, certainly Debs is thinking that she's on in 2 weeks. I mean,
No, I don't think, we'll never replace live, that it's a basic human condition to need connection. But obviously we've learned that, we can enhance our offerings with digital output, which is fantastic. But, I don't think there'll ever be a shortage of people that want to go and have a bloody good time in a field. There just won't be. I think one of the issues we've got, which Jill touched on yesterday in her a panel, is the supply chain. And we have found that, so many people have been put out of business in the last year, and that, as Jill said yesterday, that we're realising that actually there's money to be made in construction. So rather than, flogging a dead horse here, I'm actually going to go and do, have a guaranteed income by working in the construction field or whatever. So, as far as suppliers are concerned. So I think we have to really be mindful of the fact that we've got to protect that supply chain now more than ever because of what's happened in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, most of our industry is made up of freelancers and smaller companies as well, and I think it's being mindful of that, whilst also you're trying to create events that are sustainable. There's so much more that we've had to take on board, and I think it's been escalated by COVID and given us pause for thought, hasn't it, to look at what we do next and how we position and imagine our events. I think that means we are out of time, but has anybody else got any other questions? Yep.
Hi, this is a question for Maya from Boomtown. I've been a volunteer at Boomtown for 9 of the last 12 of Boomtown, so I've seen how it's grown and how the community has grown and how it's sort of morphed in its storyline. It's got very much its own community, both of all of the people who are creative in creating it, and the audience who are sort of growing with it. But you mentioned about having the community festival. Does that mean that the community around the people around Winchester and etc.? Because if you're putting something on for them so that they feel that the festival's not something that's being done to them, but that they can feel part of the community as well, that's a real leap forward, I think.
Yeah, it's important. I think the sort of scale that it's got to has put a lot of people off. I'm not sure how much of this I'm allowed to divulge, but we found that we're getting a slightly older pick-up on the ticket, and people will be able to come back and forth. So we're hoping that it will just introduce the event to those that potentially were put off before because of the scale. And we may run it as a standalone as well in future years. But yeah, it's for the locals, but also to work with local suppliers and roll back and have the time to make that connection, like linking up with Winchester University. We've been trying to do that, but we've never quite had the capacity to start that relationship properly. But we're in conversations with them now, and we're working with they always work with local charities, but yeah, it's more about just like local food wholesalers, everything, just keeping our roots there to move forward with.
Incredible. Well, thank you all very much for joining us for this discussion on creative measures, and thank you to our fabulous panel. And enjoy the next event. Thank you.